Hello, Sonia.
Hi, Vimal.
Thank you so much for joining us. What shall I say? Shall I call you the Birmingham Dancing Queen? Because you are the Dancing Queen, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, maybe more than Birmingham, the international dancing queen. I was going to break out into an ABBA song then. Um, so look, I know who you are. For those who don't know who you are, tell us your name and what you do.
So I'm Sonia Sabri and I'm a dance artist. I specialize in Kathak. I choreograph, I teach, I mentor, and I'm still a student of dance, as we all should be.
Brilliant. And obviously, one of the main things that you've emphasised is being a dancer.
Mhm.
As well as doing many of the other things that you do. Um, did you always want to be a dancer?
I think so. I mean, I think like every child in primary school either wants to be an air hostess or wants to be a teacher. But I think from my early childhood, I was introduced to dance quite young. I was introduced to dance because my dad wanted me to be a Bollywood actor.
Right.
So the reason for me to go into dancing, and I went to the Birmingham School of Speech and Drama. I did all my Lambda training, but the real reason was to enter Bollywood. So that was something I didn't want to do, but I was pushed into learning, the creative arts because of that reason. So actually, a very long story cut short. I was advised by a very famous film director, and he just said, "Good girls don't come to Bollywood. So continue with your dancing, and make a name for yourself in your dance." So that was my kind of ticket to freedom away from being a Bollywood actor, and I just kept with the dancing. So, but I think by age of 12, I knew I wanted to be a professional artist. I wanted to be on stage. I loved the stage, though I'm not really an extrovert. I think I'm really a private person, but on stage, there's that kind of inner, I don't know, there's inner energy that comes out, and I find it such a great platform to express myself, which I probably don't in other areas. So, dance again, not being verbal, transcends the spoken word. So there's something much greater and much it's less tangible, I guess. It's such a spiritual experience, so I love that.
So you could have been playing opposite somebody like Gary Oldman or David Tennant, if you didn't want to go into Bollywood. Well, would you have considered it if it wasn't going into Bollywood?
Possibly, like I said, I did Lambda and I loved theatre. So my kind of contingency plan, though it's not probably helpful. I mean, if you're dancing and if you're in theatre, if you're an actor, we know what the hardships are. So I kind of went from one hardship to another as a contingency plan. So I would have gone into theatre. I probably would have considered British films, maybe even Hollywood. I don't know, but yeah, so yeah, I guess there was a fork in the road and I decided to take one of the right directions.
So I assume you always kind of had that support from your parents to say, look, this is what we'd like you to go into. Well, or was it a case of, did you ever say, this is what I want to do? Because I'm not saying that your parents were pushy. You probably can answer that. But there's that thing, isn't there, with many people from in many backgrounds where their parents will say, look, this is an area I think that you should do. You need to learn how to play the saxophone. You need to do this. You need to do that. And sometimes the child doesn't really want to kind of do it. So, and they may want to do something else. So I was just trying to find out about that particular journey for yourself.
Yeah, I think because both of my parents came from a very traditional background, quite working class, if not below the working class line. I think all they thought success would be is having lots of money, fame, status symbols like big houses and big cars, and so for them, their reference of success was Bollywood films. And I think because again they come from very traditional families, and the escapism that they had was Bollywood films. So if that's their interpretation of the world, then they thought, okay, perhaps our daughter could do the same thing. And very unconventional actually, because which parent actually tells their child, oh, you're going to be a Bollywood actress, you know? And outside of my kind of my unit of my parents, everyone else actually really were against it. And of course, the typical traditional, if not backward, ideology that girls should not do X, Y, Z, and only boys can do X, Y, Z. And my dad got ridiculed for saying that, for kind of showing so much freedom, giving so much freedom for his daughter. How can he even consider his daughter going to Bollywood, and all of those things, or anything in the arts, to do with anything in the arts is considered as, time pass. So I think in that respect, my parents were quite forthcoming, quite courageous, but unfortunately, they had to kind of hear the banter and the the not so great remarks that they would sometimes pass for them giving their daughter that freedom. So I think they pushed me to the point where they wanted me to be the Bollywood actress, but then I think it helped going to Film City in Bollywood. I went there, and as I said, we met with a director there, and he was very clear in what goes on, to put it lightly. And that was when my mum decided, actually, no, this is not what we want for our daughter. And so we came back to Birmingham, and they just sat me down and said, what is it that you want to do? And I said, I want to dance. But then my dad wasn't sure whether that would earn me enough money. Would I be able to have a roof over my head? And started looking for other jobs just to please him. So I did actually go to the BBC Asian Network, worked there for a while, but that killed my soul. I wasn't dancing, I wasn't performing, I wasn't doing anything that I loved. I mean, it's great, media is great, but you have to love it to do it. So after about a year of that, I just said, Dad, I just need to dance and I'll be fine. I'll find the work, or, I have faith that I'll be all right.
It's so brilliant to hear that, your parents were so positive and encouraging for you to move within the arts itself. I mean, there is, do you think it is changing within various communities to kind of encourage women, girls to get work, to go out there, to go and achieve their dreams itself, and go within the arts, or do you think there's still a long way for us to go?
I think it's quite dependent on the communities, because I work a lot in Birmingham and a lot in the Midlands region, actually, doing kind of outreach work and projects for them. But there are some communities who are a little bit more forward thinking, a little bit open, but they're still, it feels like we're going back, like 1800s, where there is that mentality that, no, there are specific roles and responsibilities for a woman, and similarly for guys. So I would say there's a lot of work to do. But at the same time, how many role models are there? How many Asian female role models are there? I think a lot of the reasons I hear why they wouldn't put their daughters forward for jobs, and then unconventional jobs, that's the second option, is because they just don't see enough Asian women in those roles. So I think there's got to be more of those people coming out and being visible and talking about their experiences, sharing their lived experiences, so that there's this kind of reassurance, or there's this comfort, at least for others, like younger women and girls who may consider a career in the arts, or in something else. So recently, for example, I'm doing a lot of work and just spreading my personal story, and right down to going to, I was going down to primary schools and secondary schools through the Arts Connect, through Arts Mark, through Arts Awards, talking about the careers that are out there within the arts. And it's not about being an artist, it's not about performing only, but you can be an art journalist, you can be in the media, you could be a therapist, you could there's just so many options. You can be a stage designer, you can do lots of the other things that we don't necessarily see. If you're not on stage, we don't really actually know what's going on backstage. There's a whole team of people who make one event come alive. So, all those jobs that are available. And I realized there aren't many children, for example, who know about this, or there aren't enough people who know about the careers and the vocational options that are there.
Mhm.
and which doesn't involve performing. So I think that's the kind of discourse we need to have, and at senior level as well, you know, alongside those organizations who are you know, spreading this idea about what it is to be an artist. I think we need to be a little bit more open in terms of the options that are available, because not everyone wants to be an artist, and I think that can be quite off-putting, because not everyone wants to perform, which is absolutely fine. We need producers, we need managers, we need administrators, you know. So I think there needs to be a lot in terms of that communication of what's possible.
I mean, what's great is that what you're doing is, especially when you're going to young people, you're planting those seed of thoughts where they're suddenly going, oh, wait there, I don't just need to be a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer or sit at home, because my role as a woman, as such, is to sit at home and cook and bring up children. Because it's not, you know, what you're doing is you're kind of, what you might do is you might create a debate when they go back home, when they go. And I was wondering, it was that whole kind of thing of, how do we change the mindset of the older generation? So obviously you're planting seeds of thoughts and obviously making young people aware of the opportunities that are available, where the mindset perhaps for that older generation is perhaps going back to when you were younger, good girls don't go into Bollywood. And it's almost that kind of thing of whereby people still have that thinking that as soon as you say the arts, they think, oh, you're going into arts. Good girls, it's not Bollywood. Good girls don't go into art, you know, full stop. So just, is there a way that we can change that mindset? Or do you think it's that thing of, gosh, we're going to have to leave it to the younger generation to battle through it?
Yeah, I think it's a real difficult one, because with the older generation, it starts from the roots of, you know, ancestral roots. We can't change that. So I think it is about profiling the younger generation and the success of current times and the success of artists or people who are in the arts industry to come forward and to make this feel respectable, and to see how successful one can be, and whatever that measure of success is. I think we have to kind of let them, because they're not going to change. It's, well, you know, it's not just about what career choice you take. It's little things, you know, how it's about behavior, it's about mannerism, it's about how do you address the elders, you know, all of those little nuances of behaving in a certain way. So it's so deep rooted. I think it is the responsibility of people like myself and the next generation. But I think it's about the visibility. I think if there isn't enough of people like us being out there, and I think media, being on TV, you know, people are stuck to TV, and now we've got our digital realm here. We need to be seen there to be doing interesting work, and that's a potential way to get people to understand, yes, this is also another strand of work that one can go into. So I think I tried, but I decided I'm not going to spend the energy on trying to make others understand when they have their own and deep-rooted ways of interpreting what the arts is. You know, maybe if they have more exposure, they have to make the change. They have to want to make the change.
Well, I was going to say, is it also kind of quite difficult for you in the sense that, I'm not saying everyone's like this, where you'll get communities coming up to you and going, you know what, you're a bad example for our community. You're trying to get women to be free, to do what they want to do. We don't want that, and that's not part of our culture. That's not part of something we do in the community. Does it become quite tough on you and almost, where there's hatred towards you? I mean, how do you deal with all of that?
They used to be much more before, but I think that's also changed over time, because there is now more visibility, and also the work, when they see the work that I'm doing, no way is it what that challenges them in terms of their cultural understanding, in terms of their faith, in terms of the gender. What I'm doing is for them and for myself. Yes, it's very respectful. So I think when they see dance and it's a woman and it's an Asian woman, it's, oh, she's exhibiting herself. But when they actually see the content of the work, then they realize, oh, it's not what we had preconceived. So it's these misconceptions that they come with. And I have had women who, and we've purposely, I've invited groups of women to come to my show, those who are orthodox, those have very set in their ways and very narrow-minded. And I say, come to my show, giving them free tickets. And this was like 15, 20 of them. And then we had a poster discussion. And I said, did I in any way offend your faith, your understanding of the woman's role, your cultural heritage? And unanimously they said, no. What
I'm hoping is that they said to you is, when can we join your class?
Some of them did. So I think there's just so much misinterpretation and preconceived ideas. And I just say to them, look, if you can watch a Bollywood film, you can so watch this. I mean, Bollywood film is really now, it's pushing, we're nearly tilting over, I think, into the exotic. So my question is, well, if you can watch Bollywood film, you can watch this. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, this is much more your kind of liking if you were to accept it. So I think people coming in with an open mind and giving them that, I think when you give them that, I guess not getting them to feel that they're at risk, that if they're paying a ticket, to see your show, that's a risk for them because they're investing in something they're not sure they're going to like. So if there's a way to access those communities who are very strong, who are very strong-voiced, very strong-headed, those are the communities who actually need to be invited to see these types of works. So if there's a way, I'm not saying we can all do it, but if there is an opportunity to get them to come where there is no risk in terms of their investment, in terms of their time, you're kind of wanting to have that handshake just to gauge, is this something that's upsetting them, or is this something that they'd be able to appreciate? And if we had more of those types of opportunities, which again, I'm talking to various organizations, sometimes it's just purely, people just can't get from one end of the city to the other. I mean, it's a practical thing. And so if they're not able to come out and they're not able to appreciate what's out there, and in different perspectives, people's cultural perceptions are not challenged or not broadened, how on earth are we going to move forward? So that's my aim, is to, I used to be really afraid of people who had really traditional views, and I just thought I haven't got the energy to talk to them. But actually, they are the ones who need that dialogue. We need to have that dialogue with them, because they're the ones who will then go back to their community and say, actually, we've seen something really great and our daughters and our sisters should be doing this.
Oh, which is brilliant. Just going back slightly to, you mentioned Bollywood. Did you have a favourite Bollywood movie?
Oh.
It's surely Amarakabara Pakiza. Come on, it's got to be Pakiza.
That would be the natural one to go to. But actually, if you go giving me out of those three, Amarakabara Anthony.
Amarakabara Anthony. That's a classic, isn't it?
Yes. Or Umrao Jan, actually. Umrao Jan is the. I loved Rekha. Still do. Rekha is my penultimate. But there are some nice like Lagan is a brilliant film of our recent time. So yeah, I'm into Bollywood.
Brilliant. So you specialise in, is it Kathak? Am I saying it correctly? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about what does that mean in terms of dance, and how you're a storyteller, I assume, through dance, and what does that mean? So
Kathak literally means the one who tells a story. And in essence, we are all Kathaks. You're a Kathak, I'm a Kathak, our next door neighbors are Kathaks. We all tell stories. It's part of our human nature to tell stories. Now, whether that's some legend, or whether that's a secret, whether that's a rumor, whether it's a piece of gossip, fairy tales, we're all storytellers. We cannot not be. So using that as our principle, according to history, it's recorded that these stories were slightly stylized, because in the very olden times, the way that people educated, let's say the folk around religion, around human values, around the moral virtues of society, it was through storytelling. Now, storytelling was the most entertaining way of educating illiterate, so-called illiterate people. So the storytelling over time evolved. It became very stylized in that, it was probably a one-man show. So the characterizations of, 50 characters of a story performed by one storyteller, singing. There's what we consider rapping coming from hip hop, or, rapping is a major part of Kathak. Not many people know this, but rapping in poetry in a meter, spoken in different languages, is rapping. And so spoken word was a massive thing. Gestures, facial expressions, and then slowly bringing in song and music and instrumental music. So it evolved over several hundreds of years, trying to, I guess the purpose, to try and get the audience engaged, and you're engaging these audiences over hours. So just to have this oral presentation, perhaps after a certain time wasn't enough. So I think what we see, and through the miniature paintings also, is that they became much more lavish. So the art of storytelling has been there forever. Spaces started to become defined. Is it under the banyan tree? Is it in the village courtyard? Is it in a darbar? Is it like in a like a majestic room? Is it in the Mughal palaces? So over time, and I think particularly near the 13th century, when the Mughal Empire reigned over Indian subcontinent, I should say, not the India that we know today, they brought with them the more of the Persian aesthetics. So the stories became much more abstract. So there's the element of let's say the Hindu mythology, and then there's the abstract, where everyday story, the everyday person has something to say about the way they experience life, the way they have experienced relationships, the way they understand nature. So that had more of the kind of what we call the abstract shapes, the rhythms. It's quite virtuosic in terms of percussive, and that's not just about the music, but percussive feet. Kathak is very, very rhythmic in terms of a dance form, and how the movements are very fluid, how there's a definition of space. So basically dance is about designing space, but the Mughals brought in a very kind of almost kind of a much more prescribed way of, for example, if you spin, that kind of symbolizes the world going round, or the cosmos, or the universe, and everything is cyclic. So there are lots of I would say a much more greater understanding of symbology. So what we have as Kathak today is the storytelling and the technical. You cannot have one or the other. If you only do one or the other, you're like a half-cooked Kathak artist. You have to be able to mime your stories, and that's what it is. It's not, I think over time what we have lost as the Kathak practitioner is that the artist doesn't have to speak, doesn't have to recite the stories. It's much more embodied, and therefore we have a vocalist who will perhaps sing the story. You'll have a tabla artist or a pakawaj artist, sarangi, harmonium, vocalist. So they are musically taking the narrative forward, and it's the art of the Kathak who she or he would illustrate the story. But it's much more than it's not literal. You would show the literal, you show the poetic, you'll show the metaphoric, you'll show the symbolism. So there are many layers of the stories that is the artist's responsibility. It's not like Bollywood, where you just kind of lip sync to a song and there's a situation and you just kind of dance around an environment or you're moving the narrative forward. It's not like that at all. One has to be quite intellectual about the text that they are going to dance to.
Is that because that you've got specific movements, and I think, is it hand movement and eyes and body movements which relate to specific parts of a story or specific gestures?
Yes, though in Kathak it's much more naturalistic. In other forms of classical dance, from India. They're much more prescribed, but in Kathak, it's much more realistic, I would say, and it's the craft of the artist. So the more, I mean, you would expect that the more mature the artist, the more times they have experience of performing, they would have a much more greater palette to use in terms of facial expressions and gestures. There is a technique, but it's also required that the artist uses their own creativity to create their own gestures also.
That's brilliant. Is that the easy way out, in the sense that if somebody's watching you go, oh wait, that was my interpretation. You know, what would you mean you were doing that? That wasn't an elephant. That was something else. You know, it doesn't give you a bit of a license then in that sense.
A bit. There are hardcore traditionalists, you know, Kathak artists. No, that's not how you do it. But it's an evolving art form, and you know, Kathak as we're doing it today, or we see institutions doing it today, wasn't what it was 100 years ago. And also, you know, Kathak has evolved for the stage. It wasn't for the stage before. So things have been changing. Now we have fantastic lighting. Now we have foot microphones. We don't have to pound our feet in the way that we had to do maybe 100 years ago. You know, we had marble floors then, or we had, you know, grass, or we had muddy pavements, you know. So things have evolved and will continue to evolve. And that's my license.
do you wear bells as well on your feet?
Yes, we wear ghungru, ankle bells, which help to understand and hear each intricate detail of rhythm.
Brilliant. So, do you have a favourite dancer?
I don't, because I think each dance artist has a unique element about them, which I think I've struggled to actually say this is the one dancer. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to say any names. I think there are loads and loads and loads of artists who are so incredible.
Yeah,
we'll be here all day if I listed them.
But when you do your storytelling, is there a specific story that you like to tell through your dance, through your movement? Or you kind of go, I like telling this particular one, or you like the rhythm of it?
I think as a general, I like to see, Kathak is always seen as the escapism, or traditionally it's seen as the escape, the tool to escape from the reality of the world. And for me, and so everything's very pretty, very positive, very happy, very kind of, you know, go on a lull, which is fine. But I like to take real stories and to take them apart and use Kathak to find a way to, if not, I mean, I'm not here to resolve anything, but at least provoke, at least question, at least make people think differently, or open or widen their ideas around a particular subject matter, which is difficult to speak about. So I like to do that. I kind of like going in there sometimes the very bleak, very dark stories of people or communities. For example, we did one composition, it's called New Body, and that's the first Kathak dance film that we created. And that talked about female feticide. So it's a very challenging subject. Not many people know about it, but it happened to be a major report, news report 2 years ago. And people thought, oh, female feticide only happens in Africa or the rural parts of India. But Vimal, it's happening in Birmingham. It's happening in affluent families. It's happening in UK, which really shocked me. And rather than kind of feeling depressed about it, I thought actually this needs to be talked about. And obviously sometimes it's really tricky to talk about these things, and you can't find the right people to have the dialogue with. So I just thought, right, we're going to dance it. We're going to say it through our music. We're going to say it through our production.
So when you do something like that, in terms of your creative process, what do you do? Do you go, this is the subject matter, let's explore? Or do you kind of go, these are the issues within it, these are the themes within it, I want to explore each of these themes? Or do you just kind of, I don't know, just put some music on and just feel how you feel in terms of that? What is there an actual process that you follow?
I think I would say generally I like to research a subject really well. So I will do interviews with people from so for example, the Female Feticide, I personally interviewed over 65 women, collated their stories. Then I would work with our music director, Sonia Sabri, and say, these are the stories that, or these are the themes, or these are the issues that seem to be resonating across, let's say, these interviews. And then we will try to consolidate, okay, these are the areas that we want to hone in on. It might be the cause of the situation. It might be, is it something that's ancestral? Is it something that's happening in the 21st century? Those, we kind of hook onto those ideas, and then the music will come first. Then some ideas around what we feel about the subject matter. Then we try and do some kind of a story arc. And then again, we'll fill in music. And then once there is some kind of a dummy track ready, that's when I'll start to explore movement based on some of the images that might have occurred from just speaking to those women. Sometimes I doodle as well. Sometimes when I'm talking or interviewing, I'll actually start drawing. And sometimes those images are like the subconscious coming onto paper, because I may not be able to say anything, or I may not be able to respond to these women. But there's something in my mind, in my subconscious, that arrives on paper, and those images are sometimes very strong, and they will form a part of my choreography. So, I mean, each project is very different, but I think our training is such, and I think I'm more inclined to be inspired by music. I will listen to any piece of music and I'll immediately start thinking about how could I move, how could I use the space. So my personal way of creating is I need to have some taste of the music before I can begin to start creating.
In terms of how you generally finish with a piece like that, is there kind of recourse that you kind of show, or do you just leave it kind of? I know obviously that all depends upon from a direction point of view, or is it kind of leaving it quite open generally, and then you kind of create debate around it? Where do you kind of leave it, or is it a case of, look, here it is, see you guys later, see you again, same time next week or next year or whatever, or is it suddenly, well, wait there, look, we need to discuss this now?
Yeah, I think recently I would say it's always open-ended. Like I said, I'm not here to resolve anything. I can't, it's not possible. But what I do want to leave with these kind of theme-based or social issue-based work is to leave more questions out there. And we would make it almost mandatory that we have a Q&A afterwards, so that people aren't left kind of thinking, well, that was a great piece of work, but it made me feel really awful, or maybe really feel fearful of, how, let's say, society is evolving. So to voice those concerns and to have that discussion is where we start to think about, okay, this is how we can make things better, or this is where we need to spend our energy, or these are the communities that we need to speak to, or this is how we can try and put together a resolution. So it's that reflection that takes place after the performance, which is the most valuable time.
I was going to say, is it quite emotionally draining? Because it's quite interesting that for yourself, you've said that you found dance a way of kind of finding yourself and releasing yourself. Then suddenly you're touching on subjects like this, which are extremely emotional and must be quite emotionally tiring as well. What do you do afterwards to kind of get a positive sense of thinking in terms of getting away from it? I mean, getting out of that space, because for most artists, when you do that kind of work, and especially if you're doing it quite regularly, it can be very emotionally draining.
It is emotionally draining, and every time I say to myself, why am I doing this for myself?
I'm changing the world.
Exactly. I think because yeah, because in my heart I feel I want to make change. I want to, or at least contribute something towards change. But I have had to have therapy. I mean, I have a couple of good friends who are psychologists, and they will, after a show, I will have to go to them and I will have to talk about the experience. Or when I was interviewing, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to console myself. I would be teary and weeping and just thinking of the most horrendous thoughts, and sometimes not even sleep. Because what's shocking is it's happening. This is not a film. This is not something that we fantasize. This is not something that's made up. This is happening with real people. So I think that's when it becomes very disturbing that we don't know about these experiences, and we can't help these people. So I think it's very important for an artist to, if they feel that this is the kind of the journey they want to take on, which I'm adamant that this is what I want to do. I'm not dancing because I want to entertain people. Yes, there is an entertainment value, but inherently arts is about discussing. It's about raising social issues, or perhaps talk about cultural issues. It's a language to decipher our world. It's not only mere entertainment. It never has been. But it's people who have made it boxed into this idea of, oh, it's a bit of time to just enjoy ourselves. You can enjoy yourselves, but it also should be thinking. It should be about making you. It should make you feel, what am I doing to contribute well to the world? That's what I want my work to always evoke in people. But yes, I would recommend, I think, therapy, and I think people are beginning to understand, and Arts Council England, for example, is also beginning to understand, when people are, or artists are going down these very delicate journeys, they do need looking after. We are human, we will absorb, and that's what one does as an artist. You absorb the energy, absorb those stories. What is the release? The performance is one element of the release, but there is so much there that we've had to veil, because that would be then it would be almost kind of exposing somebody's privacy on that situation. So yeah, that's a very long answer, but yes, I think it's very disturbing. But I think as long as you have the right people to look after you, I think it's oddly, you feel, I'm glad I did this. I'm glad that work is out there, because people are now seeing that work. And I purposely made it a film as well, New Body, because I wanted more and more people see it. There was another show after that, which was the production Virago. But then that's a live performance, and only a certain number of people would be able to see it unless it kept touring. And now that we're in lockdown, I think New Body, it's still circulating film festivals, and it's online, so people are beginning to see, more people are beginning to see it. So I think how we present something is also key.
You do fun stuff as well, though. I mean, I've seen. Right, no, yes, I've only got to do stuff, where I can change the world. No, I'm not doing that because it's fun. I can't enjoy myself. No, I've seen you do stuff with Black Country Touring. I think it was back in 10, which was brilliant. And I love this whole thing of, do you think there is more now, this whole contemporary element of crossing over into different communities and different styles, and taking different elements of the way stories are told? You've talked, obviously, that rapping is a big thing anyway, within your particular style of dance, but other ways and other methods. Do you think there is more and more crossover with the whole aspect of digital media and spoken word, you name it, whatever form there is, just crossing over?
Yeah, I think there's more of it now. Though I have to say, I think we've been, and there is an expectation that even if you are a Kathak artist or a classical dance artist, there is an expectation that you're supposed to be inspired by other art forms, not only other dance forms. So I think we've been doing the crossover in our small bubbles, but there's been an awakening, and there's obviously been much more a strategic approach for artists and arts organizations to start working together. And I think because perhaps there was a less familiarity or less knowledge of other people's art forms, there was a bit of a kind of a nervousness that we don't know whether we're going to understand, or we're going to be able to appreciate, or is it going to be relevant for our audiences? You know, those kind of conversations which I used to have like 10 years ago don't exist now. And so in fact there's much more excitement when there is a crossover. There's much more inspiration, and there's much more, I find, you know, there's just so many ideas now where we're being so creative because we are collaborating. And as myself as an artist, I've always collaborated. I've always thrived on collaboration. So I kind of used to find it really odd that other people didn't do it. And I find, you know, it really helps me to understand my art form better. It makes me understand myself as an artist much better. And I grow as an artist. So, yes, so when I did the work recently or last year with Black Country Touring, and I've actually been working with them for a number of years, and it's such an amazing experience because theatre, dance, spoken word, it exists in our art forms. But let's say even in Kathak, so I'm just speaking about Kathak, we have spoken word, we have theatre, we have beatboxing. It's part of you cannot have dance without our beatbox. And again, not many people know that. They think it's all hip hop, and I have to, again, educate people. No, it's just there. And then there's the whole rapping element. So just because it happened in the Indian subcontinent doesn't mean it doesn't have a synergy with the Western world or the Western rules of theatre. And so when we come together, it's just such great fun. And it's mirroring society. It's mirroring our community. Again,
I think it's a bit,
trying to plug.
I think it's at the moment, it's a bit like bags of crisps, isn't it? In the sense that everyone was used to either ready salted or cheese and onion or salt and vinegar. And now suddenly they're going, wait there, we want a little bit more. We want chili. You know, it's, and suddenly, I mean, at the moment, I think all crisps are super hot or super chilified or whatever it is. And so suddenly you're wondering, is that the same kind of thing whereby you're finding this big kind of crossover where people are going, wait there, I want more, I want more. But what I'm wondering is whether there'll be that whole crossover where the traditionalists come back and they go, oh, we want to know what the real meaning of dance was, in terms of perhaps what you do, where they go, we want it to go back to old school, or that'll be a new market of its own. Do you think that something like that will happen eventually, or there's different markets or traditions?
I think there already are. I think our audiences are quite segmented. There are people who only will come and see classical work or the pure work, and perhaps for a bit of refreshment they may go and see a collaborative work. But there is definitely hardcore classical artists, and there are definite audiences who want to just see collaborative work, and there's another audience who don't really know what they want to see, and they're happy to go with it. So I think at the moment, that's why I think we've actually got the opportunity to have lots of audiences and create work, and to get them to come together, rather than saying, okay, we only have this group of people who will only see our work. We've potentially got three lots of segments coming to see our work. It's all about pitching. It's all about how you make it relevant to the audiences that you are performing to. And I think the audiences will run in parallel as well. As I said, you know, there are certain audiences who will never come and see a collaborative work. So if I'm doing my traditional work or my classical work with live music, that is a set audience. And if I say, oh, I'm doing this, they'll go, no, but you're not going to be doing it with live music, or you're not in your costume, or you're not, you know, I personally feel that's quite kind of small-minded, because again, they're not expanding their palette. They don't know whether they're going to like it or not. So I think these audiences will run in parallel. And I think as long as, because the other thing, Vimal, is you can't not go through the actual training of Kathak. You cannot do Kathak, you can't do it for 2 years and then go off and start collaborating. I mean, there are people who do that. And you can see the authenticity.
You're laughing because it says it to say, gosh, I've seen them and they've been really poor. I was going to say, give us the names. No, we won't go down.
Never. But you can tell when somebody has really invested and still invests in their art. It's an ongoing journey. You know, sometimes, I mean, a lot of us say one lifetime isn't enough. So you can tell the ones who've just kind of picked up some moves and then they've just got into fusion or they've done collaboration, or coming back to your analogy of food, which I love, you know, don't put garam masala in lasagna. Don't do it.
Is chili okay though?
Chili is good. So, you know, there's a fine line. There is a fine line. But when there's a hodgepodge, and I think that's when we have to be careful, because when audiences don't have a good experience and they can see it's just a mix match or it's just a fusion of just random stuff coming together, that puts them off. And then it's extremely difficult to get them back. But
isn't that where contemporary comes in? Where you go, oh, it's a contemporary piece, and you kind of like, wait.
What is contemporary? I still haven't worked it out. Kathak is contemporary for me. People have labeled it as classical. Classical, I would say, is the idiom. There's a style to it. There's a language to it. So it's like a font. It's like, we all know you can write in italics, you can write in Arial font. These are fonts, and that's all they are. So, but how you use the language is up to the artist, up to the author, up to whoever's, you know, wants to use language. So that's how I see Kathak. It's almost like I've got an understanding of the font, and I will now use it to say whatever I wish. And now, whether I want to talk about traditional stories, long way back, or whether I want to talk about the everyday, for me, Kathak is just there as a tool to talk about anything. So contemporary, what is it? Kathak is very contemporary. You just use it for what you want to say. So if I'm about the here and now, I'm a Birmingham-based artist, my experiences are about Birmingham, I will use Kathak to help me explore that, help me relay that to my audiences.
See, whereas contemporary for me is dad dancing.
Of course it would be.
It's that whole thing of, you know what, this is my style, this is how I do it. It's contemporary. No, you teach as well. So yes. Are you quite a strict teacher generally?
I think I have expectations. I have great expectations from my students. I think my teaching has evolved over years. I think I used to be much more stricter and less smiley. But, you know, some students can take it, some students can't. And I think I realized, you know, I want people to learn because I want them to get a taste of what I am so passionate about. I'm not expecting them to be the next performing artists. If they had Kathak in their life, they'll realize the blessing that it is, because you understand the world and you understand the people in the world in a completely new light. That's what Kathak teaches you. So I feel, you know, it'll help them in their journey of life. It'll help them as people. It'll help them psychologically, mentally, emotionally. And I've certainly, without a doubt, seen that during lockdown through the online classes. So I think I've become much more warmer as a teacher, but when things have to be done right, they have to be done right. So, you know, I'm not one of those, oh yeah, I'll give you 10 chances to get it right. No, you practice and you come back and you show me that you got it right.
I assume it's from your perspective, it's a case of how much do they really kind of want to be a dancer, and where they are in part of their particular journey, whether it's confidence and communication skills. I mean, there's something that I kind of do with young people is what I do is I look at their identity, in the sense that sometimes it's they're not proud of who they are, what they are. So it holds them back and being free. But as soon as they suddenly accept, this is who I am. Yeah, this is, you know, whether it's my race, religion, sexuality, whatever it is, suddenly what it does is it frees them. And once they've accepted that, they excel in whatever they are doing. So I didn't know whether you kind of, there's that fine line where you've got parents going to you, how's my daughter doing? Or how's my son doing? You know, and you're kind of going, well, they seem to be lacking confidence at the moment. So does that become a difficult thing for you again, in that sense of what area you need to focus on as a teacher?
Yes, and an extra, not difficulty, but I have to be mindful of, is that I don't just have children. I have quite an intergenerational student batch. So the youngest is, for example, 4,
Okay.
and the eldest is 70. So
7-0.
70.
Wow.
So yes, you'll find the parents who will want to see that their child is excelling. And again, I'm coming back to that point of, you know, not every child will be an artist, and that's absolutely okay. It's taken me time to understand that and appreciate that, because the more I've delved in the arts, and I'm going to art therapy and all of those things, the more I can actually see the options that are available, the transferable skills that are available from learning Kathak into maybe another profession. So so I've sometimes, yes, I've had to kind of make them realize that perhaps their son or daughter will not be an artist, but they can use this in XYZ. And I think that's much more, that's actually, it's satisfying for parents to hear that, unless you get the 1 or 2, no, my son, daughter is going to be a performer and they are going to be on stage, blah, blah, blah. Then of course, we all have those. And sometimes it's difficult to go on that journey with them. But I think what I am good at is that I filter. When I know it's going to be a difficult relationship, then I just say, maybe I'm not the right teacher. That may upset people, but I'm very clear with what the expectation is from my part, but also I make it very clear to them that I'm giving you options using Kathak. And for those, for example, who are much more elderly, you know, some of them are like the age of my grandmother, physically, emotionally, they have improved through dancing. So there's the value of that. How can I have ever experienced and then express that to potential students that, you know, age is not a barrier to dance. And we have, you know, brilliant examples of students who are elderly, and how they were when they first started and how they are now. Much more agile, much more, coherent with their thinking, with their thought processes, through their articulation about what they're doing, how they're feeling, how they're coming together with other people. The impact, the positive impact that dance has, I cannot put it into words. I mean, I should, because we need to put it down as fact. There are obviously scientific case studies now that dance and music have such a profound effect, physically, mentally, spiritually. And I feel so blessed that I'm able to experience that firsthand. So as a teacher, you know, I have to understand, okay, you know, this is what I should expect from this group. This is what I need to expect from this group. And this is what to expect in this group. You know, some people are only coming because they need some respite. There are some people who, they just need a break from their family, or they need a break from their home. I mean, unfortunately, some are now, obviously we are in lockdown in Birmingham, but for a reason for them to come to class or to a workshop was just to get out of the darkness of their home.
I think you should have a new kind of logo. You should kind of go, Sonia Sabri, we can't guarantee that you'll be an accountant or a solicitor, but we will guarantee that it leaves a positive impact. There you go. So
you can do my PR and marketing for me.
No. Just finally, Sonia, it's really actually there's a couple of things. in terms of the dancing, is it open to, is it just women, or is it guys can learn it as well? Or
Yes, I mean, there is a women-only class as well, but there's also lots of classes that are open to men and women. And in fact, there's an upcoming, one of my students, he's a male dancer. He's very talented, and I have great expectations for him. Yeah, and it's great.
Yeah, and you're not just, it's not just for the Asian community, is it?
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. But again, you know, when things are labelled, or this is an Indian classical dance style, la 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 la, then people think, oh, you have to be Indian to learn it. But no, dance, as I said, you know, has no boundaries. It has no age boundaries, no cultural boundaries. Yes, the stories perhaps derive from Indian subcontinent, but they're human stories. They're about love. They're about separation. They're about lots of things. I mean, it's about the human and the lived experiences which we can showcase through Kathak.
So for those of us that can't dance, what advice would you give us?
I believe that everyone can dance.
No, not me.
You can. I'll make you. I think everyone, of course, some people have innate rhythm. They can understand musicality perhaps sooner than others, but that's all it is. It's just kind of locking into that musicality, right? And really feel, you know, even when we're just gesturing or when we have mannerisms, you know, that's a form of dance language. What dance or a style of dance does, it starts to give it a style, a little bit of rule, and it's about designing the space. So we all do that. You've been doing that all the time.
Okay, I won't go into it. So how can people contact you, or what have you got, Facebook pages or Twitter or whatever, social media platforms?
Yeah, so Sonia Sabri Company website, www.ssco.org.uk. Sonia Sabri Company is on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, or find us on, you can just type us in online and you can find us there.
Well, look, Sonia, it's just been brilliant chatting to you today. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Have you enjoyed it?
I have. It's been great fun.
That's good. Well, look, I'm going to just sign off now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.